Hi, everybody. I'm Joseph Goodman from Goodman Games. Welcome to What's New with Goodman Games. So we do one of these seminars every couple months, maybe twice a year or so, just to update you guys on everything that we're working on. So over the course of the next hour, hour and a half or so, I will be joined by several of the people who've been working on some really cool projects that'll come down your way soon. I'm just going to talk about things that are in the works. Some of it's been announced, some of it's not announced. Some of it was announced 3 or 4 years ago and we're still working on it. I'll talk about some projects that are just ideas at the moment and still sort of coming in finality, and others that have beta rules already out and are close to the finish line. And we'll talk to some of the creators to get their thoughts on what keeps them alive and thinking at night about all the cool stuff they want to work on and what motivates them to keep working on something else. So with that general introduction, we're also monitoring the chat on Twitch, and if you see me looking over to the side, that's me looking at the chat. So if you guys have any questions or want any additional elucidation, just let me know and I'll try to answer. And I should call this out, I'm working from home, as many of us are these days. So over the course of this, you may meet my dog, my wife, my children, who knows what unexpected guests may pop up. So jumping in, I want to talk a little bit about accessories to start with. Actually, I wanted to show you, I also have a pile of samples here. So it's kind of interesting. At a con, I can't do this, but here I can physically pick up stuff. I want to show you guys something. This may look like a judge's screen. Some of you may recognize this image from the first round of judge's screens we did for DCC. I think it's been like 6 or 7 years ago now, when we had the 3-panel like this. But one of the differences now is you're not going to be able to see this as much on the screen, but it's a very thick cardboard. Actually, you can kind of see it. It just looks thicker. We are currently reprinting the judge's screen and doing it on a much thicker cardstock, which people have actually requested for a while, and it's a natural opportunity now that we have to reprint it. So this is actually at the printer now and will be out in a couple months. And for those of you who need a new judge's screen, because the last one we printed was on thin stock that may have worn away by now or whatever it might be, keep an eye out for the thick, durable one. The inside is the same, still got the same tables as before, but very thick, durable screen coming your way. While we're on accessories, one other thing to tell you about is there's a Kickstarter running right now from Impact Dice. It's actually called, I believe, Snow Cone and Sundae colors, because a lot of the colors kind of resemble confection treats. But among the many, many colors being offered, and Impact has done dice for Goodman Games and DCC for many years now, 5, 6, 7 years. And they've always done a great job. They're one of the first companies to actually produce all the interesting, unusual dice sizes that we need, all the quote weird dice. Before you had to buy some from this dice manufacturer and some from that dice manufacturer, but Impact can get you the complete run in a single solid color set, or now in a variety of marbled color sets and speckled and so on. Anyway, check out their Kickstarter, which is live now. It's got in it, among other things, 5 unique dice sets just for DCC that are being produced in the dice tubes, and actually have new art of monsters painted by Doug Kovacs with stats and write-ups by Harley Stroh inside the label. And actually, we'll come back to the monster paintings in a sec, because we're also going to do a monster book, but it'll have art similar to those things. Anyway, check out that Kickstarter right now. Actually, there's another Kickstarter too called Orcs, which is also live as a DCC third-party product, which is really cool. You're basically on a fast-moving train battling orcs, and it's a really unique mechanism that uses kind of playing cards to assemble the train. So anyway, 2 cool Kickstarters for you to check out. But the next thing I want to show you, speaking of Kickstarters, is something I've been talking about for years. Is you can see behind me my shelves, and I have obviously lots of books, but lots of modules too, and a lot of them are kind of loose, thin modules that don't necessarily fit real well on a shelf. So I use these, like, I call them shelf files, or file folder things that I get from like IKEA or the Container Store. And for years I've wanted to do one that's custom painted that looks like a gaming product. So on that note, I have here with me a production sample. I mean, I feel like I talked about this at GaryCon years ago, but this folds flat, it'll ship flat, and it unfolds to become a shelf file that you can put your adventure modules in. So now let me assemble this real quick and we'll show you what it looks like. The idea is that people can actually pick this up, and we get it custom produced with custom art, and then you can finally have a really cool way to hold your adventure modules on your shelf. It's got a little piece here that makes it flat. So I'm showing you this because we're actually going to be producing these. This is my physical sample that the printer produced after some back and forth to get the specs exactly right. And Doug actually has the other physical sample, because Doug has been painting his sample to come up with, it's actually really cool, a painting that actually perfectly aligns with the dimensions of this thing. So it'll have all new Doug Kovacs artwork. And what we're going to do is he painted these really cool kind of frames for the sides, and we're going to make those stickers. So you can put a little sticker on the front that says, like, my 5th edition modules, or my DCC modules, or, that campaign I ran, or all my character sheets or recipes or whatever else you'd like. But we're going to be producing this. The Kickstarter will probably go live early next year. And it's something I've been talking about literally for years. We finally have the right printer and the right art and the right product to make it work. How many, I'm looking at the comments, how many modules do you think these will hold? I actually, since I have a physical sample, I tested it. It depends on how thick they are, like 16 versus 48 pages, but it's about 20-ish or so if you really stuff them in. It's about 15 if you kind of, give them a little space to breathe. I should mention it even holds hardcovers. I happen to have here a copy of Castle Amber, which we'll talk about in a sec, but you can fit 2 thick hardcovers in it pretty easily. Anyway, it's going to be really cool. We're going to run a Kickstarter. The Kickstarter will consist of obviously backing these and having them custom printed with the art on it and the stickers. And then also probably some deal where we'll stuff, it's frankly going to be, as long as you're mailing out something, you might as well mail out something to stuff into it. So some deal where we'll stuff a bunch of modules into it at some great price. So look for that coming hopefully early next year sometime. So what else do we have to talk about? I'm going to go through kind of a list of topics here first before I bring the guests on, just to keep you guys updated on current projects and so on. Another thing we've talked about for several months now is virtual tabletop support, or VTT support. Back at the first Cyclops Con, which was April, if I remember correctly, we sort of tried to start ramping this up quite a bit. We just released DCC number 67, Sailors on the Starless Sea, as a VTT product last Wednesday, I think, just recently. And we're still in the process of working through these with the sort of full color maps and all the sort of interesting approach that we've taken. Couple of things on this. Number one, this will continue. So we continue to have the artists working on, creating new versions. And actually, I got a great question the other day, which is, why don't we just re-release the black and white maps and take off the area numbers? In the early days of doing DCC modules, which was like 10 years ago now, in many cases, those area numbers were actually painted or drawn directly onto the map. They weren't like a separate Photoshop layer. So it's not something we can easily do to just hide all the area numbers and convert this to tabletop format, which is why we're not taking that approach. Instead, we're just painting fresh, new color ones, which look really cool anyway, and then gets around that issue. But we had some really interesting customer feedback recently, which is, I always assume people use these digitally, but apparently a fair number of customers are actually buying them to print them out and use them for physical miniatures maps, which is certainly not what I intended at all, but is apparently quite popular for some folks. And we got comments that they would prefer to have these with a white backdrop instead of a black backdrop, obviously, because the black consumes a lot of ink. So good call. If you pick up number 67, you'll see we included a version in there with white backdrop as well as the black backdrop. And we'll go back and retrofit the others over the coming weeks to get you guys set up to also use them for printed play. Then one other update, we have a fair number of products available on Fantasy Grounds, quite a few available as independent VTT stuff, like on our own site or drive-through. We don't have much on Roll20. That's because we have to build the Roll20 compendium. Turns out that takes a lot of work. So we're still working on that. The spells are very time consuming, but that continues to move forward. So in a couple months, we'll have that ready. And then once we sort of have that first infrastructure piece built, then we can start taking the VTT packs of the modules and actually convert them to Roll20 as well. So I'm telling you this just to let you know it is coming. It's still moving forward, and it will be coming. A couple other brief updates on current Kickstarters to keep you in the loop. Doom on the Warden, I posted a picture of these to the Kickstarter, but the books are actually printed and they are shipping. So sorry, shipping to me, to me, not yet to you. Once they hit our warehouse, they are ship out to you guys, but we're pretty close to being completed here and you guys will have it soon. And the books really turned out great. They look great. They, I'm sure you saw the photos on Kickstarter, but as usual, we have the drawn in sheets and lots of art, and the back has a color version of the front cover art. So if you bought the foil cover, you still get the cover art in the back. Anyway, it turned out and they're on their way. We also have produced the armbands. So I have here a box full of armbands, which doesn't exactly look super attractive, but anyway, you get the idea. All the armbands are printed. This includes the new ones we printed for new designs, as well as reprints of the prior ones from customers who backed them on the Kickstarter. So all that's coming your way soon if you back Doom on the Warden. For Empire of the East, the printer proofs should actually arrive in my hands next Thursday. So I'll post pictures of those on Kickstarter a couple days later, assuming everything goes as planned. And that's moving along just fine. Greatest Thieves in Lankmar, the layout's about 95% done. We basically have a few minor pieces of art to drop in and a couple of things we're tweaking and so on. But we're probably about 1 to 2 weeks out from having that to you guys in a first pass. Usually we give you the PDF first and then let backers take a look. And no matter how many times we proof it, there's always at least one typo that slips through. So usually the backers tell us about the 1 or 2 typos that we missed. We get those fixed and then we send it to the printer. So you should have that in a couple weeks. And then Judges Guild, the Deluxe Collector's Edition, the Janelle Jackway's edition, so to speak, The Kickstarter just wrapped up about a week and a half ago. And the book, the contents are mostly assembled. We're putting a few final pieces of art into the arrangement of things, and layout that will start in a couple weeks, but it's coming along pretty well. All right, that's current projects. Now, briefly to talk about, actually, I want to talk about international shipping costs, because this has been a hot button topic for many international customers lately. Long story short, our costs have gone up considerably for international shipping over the last couple of years, especially in the last year. We haven't actually raised our costs in a long time. So we were, subsidizing the shipping costs for a long time. So we actually raised our shipping costs on the website maybe 2 months ago about, as well as on Kickstarters. The program we're using is a prepaid FedEx program for UK, EU, and Canada, if I remember correctly, that also covers VAT costs. So if you're paying what looks like a very expensive shipping cost through the online store or through the Kickstarter, keep in mind it does include the VAT, which is roughly 20% for large parts of Europe and 5% for Canada. But in addition to that, it actually is just more expensive than what we were charging, because we hadn't raised costs in a long time, and costs have gone really high this year. One of the challenges of the current COVID era is that a lot of areas, as they get hit by the virus, their mail delivery really slows down. This even happened in the US and New York. We had a huge run of shipments to New York that were lost or unaccounted for during the worst of the crisis in that city. And so we're having to do a lot of reships too. So international shipping is just getting incredibly expensive and incredibly time consuming, and it takes forever, which is why we unfortunately had to raise the cost to account for that. If and when we all come out on the other side of this, hopefully in a couple months or so, and things are better, then we'd be happy to go back and lower the cost again. It's not something we're making money off. It's just something to deal with the current situation. In other words, sorry, international folks, I would love to be able to ship you stuff affordably, and we'll hopefully get back there soon. So one more thing on general projects, the road crew. So we will be having the road crew next year. The format will be slightly different, which is something I talked to the road crew folks about on a Wednesday meeting a couple weeks ago. We in the past, I mean, really, for as long as we've been doing this, it's consisted of you run 1 game, then 2 games, and 3 games, and you have kind of ascending order. By the way, you might hear my children banging at the door. That's not a monster. That's my children. I'm going to try to avoid answering as long as I can. Anyway, so the road crew for a long time has been consisting of, you run games and sort of ascend the tiers. Well, and that was based on this assumption that you could go to a local game store and sort of, schedule a Thursday night game or something and slowly progress to a campaign setting. A lot of that way of doing things has changed now that a lot of game stores are either open sporadically or not open at all or whatever. And even the physical cons, where you might hit the local con circuit and run, 4 games in each con and the 3 cons in your area, that's fallen apart. So we're going to change the way we do things a little bit. Essentially next year, there'll be a monthly road crew swag. So if you run a game in January, you get the January swag. And then that goes away. And if you run a game in February, you get the February swag. And then that goes away, and so on throughout the year. This also gives us a chance to, like a lot of the swag in the past was based on the assumption that you would sew the patch on your vest, and then wear the belt buckle to the con. It was all about sort of being present in a physical environment. Now that's not going to happen, but we're going to go with stickers, because a lot of people put stickers on their laptop. You can show stickers off on a folder that you hold up to the screen. And this fan contest for a sticker design has gone so well. I mean, if you go to our website right now and go in the upper right, you can see the link to vote for your favorite sticker. And they're so good. I mean, these are the best of the bunch. And I originally thought I'd have 3 or 6 and people would vote for the best of those. I think we put up 12 for the best of, and that was, it was hard to get it down to 12. There were so many really good sticker designs. So I think for the road crew next year, we'll have some that'll be the official designs that, Doug and Stefan and Peter and those guys designed, which we posted to show you guys a couple of weeks ago on the website. But then I think we'll also make use of a lot of these really cool designs that fans came up with, and that'll be part of the road crew program for next year. All right, so that's it for the general stuff. Now I want to talk a little bit about new releases. And you guys may hear me talking to somebody named Thorn. He's not an imaginary friend. He's the guy running the stream. He's right here in my computer, although you can't see him. So Thorn, if you don't mind, could you show the cover to MCC number 11 so I can talk a little bit about that? All right, so everybody, we will continue our support for Mutant Crawl Classics. We actually had a couple of things planned, and this year has been a crazy year. But the next book to come out for MCC will be number 11, The Omnivory of Eden by Stephen Newton. Stephen wasn't able to join us today right now because he's busy running games. He's running a ton of games. He had a great seminar the other day about horror in your gaming. Was yesterday, I think it was. He's a huge supporter of these cons. But Anyway, this is coming your way early next year. The basic premise is that there was a seed vault that was, I mean, we've all heard of seed vaults. It exists in the real world. And one of them remained locked up for centuries and then sort of gets unlocked, and chaos ensues in the world of MCC. So look for that coming early next year, and we'll try to get Steven on one of these programs to talk more about it when it's available. Within the world of MCC, there's other stuff in the works too. And of course, Empire of the East, when it comes out, is, can work really well with MCC as well as it works with DCC. We'll talk more about those in the days to come. And then Thorne, if you can show the cover to the Tome of Adventure. So I've actually talked about this one before. I just wanted to, for those of you who didn't hear me talk about it, acknowledge that Tome of Adventure is still coming out. This was originally planned to come out in the middle of this year, and then COVID happened and a lot of other things. But the idea behind this is we will start taking some of the thin DCC modules and compiling them into hardcover format. A lot of retailers actually prefer that format. And frankly, a lot of gamers have told us they prefer that format. I actually like the individual ones because you get the cool cover art and opportunities to rotate the cover art with new printings and so on. But anyway, not everybody's the same vein. Retailers like the thicker spines. So this first one will be a compilation of the first, I think it was either 5 or 6 DCC modules. And then basically once or twice a year going forward, we'll publish another compilation of a similar nature and slowly bring a lot of these. I mean, they're mostly still in print, but some of them are out of print, but bring them into this format going forward. So look for this, again, probably early to mid next year. And then once we finally get out and get on a cycle of these, it will hopefully be every 6 to 9 months releasing a new one. And I should have mentioned the last cover of the Omnibury of Eden was by Stefan Pogue. This one for the Tome of Adventure is by Doug Kovacs. So now I'm actually going to bring on a special guest. So if you guys can put your hands together, or maybe just put your chat together for Marzio Mushedre, and I think I said that right. Come on in, Marzio.
Perfect.
All right, welcome to the show, Marzio.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Marzio, I hear you wrote this year's holiday module.
I did. I, in fact, wrote it and handed it in.
Good. And we actually have cover art in the works. So Stefan's doing the cover.
Okay.
And we'll show that to everybody. Now, I know we went back and forth in the title. Why don't you share the title and then tell us a little bit about the adventure?
Sure. Okay. The title of this year's holiday adventure is The Doom That Came to Christmastown. And it is basically the adventure opens in Christmastown, where sitting atop a majestic pine tree in the town center is a strange gemstone tree topper known as the Yule Light. And this Yule Light has shined for millennia and is a symbol of peace and hope to all in the realm. But suddenly, the Yule Light has beginning to dim and die. While, unbeknownst to all, far to the north in the gloom of a mountaintop cave, a strange creature has awakened. This creature is vile, foul, and mean, and can be considered a real king of sots, if you'd say.
Maybe even a Grinch?
Yes, even a Grinch. And now, with only days left before Christmas Eve, a sour, sweet wind blows from the north, threatening to end the holiday. But worse yet is Lord Claus's trusted champions, the great dwarven mining prospector Yukon of Cornelius, Rudolph the Red, and the powerful dental mancer Hermie have all gone missing, lost somewhere in the frozen north. You guys, as PCs, gather to embark on a heroic quest to find out why the Yule Light is dying, try to find Santa's lost champions, and in essence, fight back the darkness and save the holidays from the doom that has come to Christmastown. So that's basically the elevator pitch of the adventure.
That's great.
Now, the adventure itself, it can be played as incorporated into your home world, like with minimal effort, but I actually designed it as a one-shot with where it can be played. It comes with 7 iconic pre-generated characters in the adventure. So you can play anyone from Cindy Lou Who, the halfling from Whoville. You can play Comet Sun Fireball, the fledgling reindeer, Mrs. Claus, Hermes Boss from the toy shop. Who else can you play? Oh, Sam, the sword and board snowman, special delivery Kluger, and of course the Winter Warlock. But please, he likes to be known as Winter only.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
So I think I can guess the answer to the next question, but what were your inspirations for this adventure?
Well, yes, it's a complete callback, of course, to network Christmas TV specials that we all grew up with. So obviously Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, A Christmas Story, Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Frosty the Snowman, and of course Conan the Barbarian. Because if anybody knows anything about me, I have 3 default settings. One is I'm always hungry, product of Italian grandparents cooking 24/7. I'm always polite, Canadian, and for things of gaming, I always revert to I default to Conan the Barbarian for things like setting, character design, world building, story pacing. I think Robert E. Howard is the best when it comes to that kind of stuff. And actually, the opening scene in the adventure where it's player start, and it says, I think I remember it. It says player start, first castle on the left. Actually, the only castle on the left is a direct. That entire scene is pulled from a Conan story. And I'll leave it up to the readers to figure out which one it is. It's an iconic Robert E. Howard story, but that whole opening scene is from a Robert E. Howard Conan story. So those were my inspirations in the story.
I mean, nothing says Christmas like Conan.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So tell me about your writing process. How'd you actually go about putting this together?
Well, that's kind of funny because I'll tell you how it started. I get an email out of the blue from Joseph, and it says, "Hey, do you want to write the Christmas adventure this year?" And of course, in my mind, I'm like, heck yeah, I want to write it. I'm going to write the best one ever. And why did it take you this long to ask? But of course, when I type it out, it's thank you so much for the opportunity. Because I'm Canadian. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a great honor. And then the second I hit send, I realize, oh my God, what did I do? There's a lot of adventure ideas bouncing around in this head over years of, just years of gaming and being a fantasy geek. I probably have stories of, I've thought of stories of vampires or space operas or whatever. I promise you, I have never thought of a Christmas adventure. So I started from absolutely zero, which was different for me. And then Joseph gave me about, was it 4.5 weeks you gave me to write this adventure?
Sounds generous.
Harley's been writing DCC 100 for 7.5 years. So I instantly wanted, and I'm sorry, I know it's going to be awesome, Harley. I know it.
Do you need a 7-year extension?
I handed it in. It's awesome. But I almost contacted our union steward, Brendan LaSalle, to see there has to be a rule, probably right under children 11 years or younger should not work in coal mines. There should be a rule that says you shouldn't have to write the holiday adventure in 4.5 weeks during a pandemic year. But you know what? So and it's the middle of August. And it's record temperatures here. And everyone's in my pool with umbrella drinks. And I'm brooding in the corner thinking of glaciers and blizzards and icebergs. And you know what? I love that I did it. I love the challenge it presented. And I think personally, I think it pulled it off. Ultimately, it's going to be the humble reader that is going to decide if I pulled it off or not. But I'm really happy with the outcome of the adventure in the end.
Yeah, in some ways, I mean, something you want to avoid happening to you or anybody is you don't want to be stereotyped as or pigeonholed as like, the writer of this type, and I think anybody who's read some of your other uplifting titles, such as Death Slaves of Eternity, or other such positive, uplifting memoirs, might conclude that you're somewhat pigeonholed into the, Clark Ashton Smith brand of, cosmic insignificant horror. But seriously, that I think in some ways makes you a good candidate to branch out of that and write something that is unfamiliar with what you've written before. And I think you did a great job on it.
Well, I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right, because pigeonholed, sure. But just my thought process, of course, right? That's what, when I think of gaming, that's what I, default to. Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith. So to kind of challenge myself and think, way outside the box. I don't do whimsical. I'm not whimsical. And I was forced to, and I'm glad I was, because I think I learned a lot in the process of doing it. So I think it was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, for all the fans, I mean, we started doing holiday modules, I think it was in 2013, partly when I realized we had a lot of gamers. I mean, everybody takes a week or two off around the holidays, and they often wind up at home, gaming with their friends or family or their old high school buddies or whatever. And we would get a lot of requests for, what do I play over the holidays? And that led to this idea of doing holiday modules. And we've run the gamut. We've done DCC versions, MCC. We did an X-Crawl version, focused it on different aspects of the holidays that happen at that time of the year. But this year, more than other years, like, people really need a positive message of some kind. So part of the challenge here was, how do you write a holiday module that's not just silly fun, but actually sort of has, I don't know, reassures people and makes them remember that the world's still a decent place out there and we'll get past all the chaos of 2020. So
Yeah, no doubt. 2020 has been hard on everybody. So that was one of the things I focused on when writing this adventure. And I promise anyone who plays it, at some point, you're going to have a smile on your face. There'll be a
yes.
scene, an item, a character, a situation that you will distinctly remember from the TV shows you grew up with during the holidays. And I had my two boys. I rated their bookcases for the Grinch and Rudolph books, and I'm sitting poolside reading these things. And I actually had them jump in and read it to me while I took notes of things that I wanted to incorporate. It was actually pretty cool. And I've never done that when my boys are young, so they're not going to. I can hardly read Clark Ashton Smith, so they're not going to actually be able to do that with me. So with the holiday adventures, we were able to do that, and it worked out. I
awesome.
think so, at least.
Cool. So the adventure is great. Everybody, you'll see it announced on the website in a couple of weeks once the cover art is done, but I think it'll prove very popular. So thanks, Marzio, for joining us.
Okay, appreciate it.
Okay. Now, and I think Thorin is going to pop things back to normal here. And cool. It's going to be a great adventure, everybody, and you'll see it on the website soon. Thanks, Marzio. It's great to hear about it. So now we're going to talk about a little bit of 5e stuff. So Thorin, if you don't mind, I understand Chris Doyle is lurking out there somewhere. You can pull Chris in. And I think most of you guys have met Chris before, either in person at Gen Con or digitally, or maybe yesterday even, or was it 2 days ago at the 5e Open Call Seminar? There he is. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Great. How's everybody doing?
Pretty good. Yeah. So welcome to What's New with Goodman Games. And I was going to figure we talk a little bit about 5e type stuff.
Great. Let's bring it on. It's been a busy 5e weekend.
Yeah. So tell us about the open call. Well, tell us in general, but let's start with the open call. We weren't going to originally, but since that's the big news and you just talked about it with everybody at the seminar on Friday. Tell us about the open call.
So for those folks who don't know, we are doing an open call for 5e content. We're looking for writers, playtesters, and editors. That is going to go live tomorrow morning sometime. I'm not sure what time zone that's going to be in though. So it's sometime tomorrow. It's going to go live on the website. We actually put together a seminar on Friday night. We invited a bunch of the 5e team, as they call them, to talk to the prospective authors and the folks who are interested in submitting to the 5e open call. We had 34 people on the Zoom call. It went great. We showed off a little bit of a PowerPoint. We went through the stages of how we're going to do this call, and it kind of turned into a little bit of a pep rally, and it was quite exciting. Even the team is pretty excited about getting some new blood in. We have so many really cool ideas for 5e content. We just don't have enough writers and editors to work on it all. So we need more people. The projects that we're doing are getting bigger, more complicated. You're going to see that with Temple of Elemental Evil. It's something that you really can't assign to one person. You really need a team approach. And that's the direction that we're going. And I'm really excited. In my previous career, a big part of what I did was I hired young biologists. I mentored them. I brought them up. I showed them the ropes and everything. And that's the same thing that we're going to be doing here. We're going to be grabbing some new talent, and I'm going to bring them under the Goodman Games wing. We're going to welcome them into the family, and they're going to go off and run, and they're going to do some exciting projects. So it went great.
Of course, we sacrificed them at the end, right? Or was I not supposed to mention that? Of course.
Yeah. Well, no, wait. That's DCC. That's when you do the DCC RPG open call. We don't do that in 5e.
Okay.
I mean, that's crazy.
My bad.
That's crazy. Yeah. So maybe we do that up in Canada. I don't know. So. But yeah, so it's really exciting. We're expecting to get flooded with a bunch of submissions. We're expecting to find a bunch of people out of this open call, and it's going to be great. Can't wait.
Cool. That's awesome. All right, so now let's talk about Castle Amber. And speaking of big projects that keep getting bigger, first we'll talk this, then we'll talk Temple of Elemental Evil, and everyone will see why we need help. But Thorin, if you don't mind showing the cover, I actually have one of the advanced copies here. So if you pre-ordered this, the pre-orders actually started shipping Friday, I want to say. I think it was just a couple days ago. And they'll be shipping out this coming week as well. And then they should be in people's, I mean, some people might get them as soon as this coming week, but basically over the next week or two, you guys will start receiving the pre-orders. So Chris, I know Michael Curtis actually wrote Castle Amber with the assistance of Bob Brinkman, and Mike couldn't join us today. But from your perspective as the 5e lead designer, tell us about Castle Amber.
Well, Castle Amber is it's usually been termed the funhouse dungeon. Basically, it's kind of like a spooky haunted house, and there's just all sorts of crazy encounters, and it's definitely one of Michael's favorites. And he's talked about it for years. So when we were brainstorming about, what are we going to do next in the ore line, he was just like, "Hey, Castle Amber," and we're like, "All right, that fits." And Michael was all over doing it. So obviously, it's based on Clark Ashton Smith's writings. And it's got some of the most, how would I put it, off the wall encounters that I remember. I mean, I remember there's a whole indoor garden. And that part was always fascinating because you start doing a dungeon adventure, and the last thing, especially when you go into a mansion or a ginormous castle-like house, you don't expect an indoor garden, and the varied encounters, and they were great. I mean, there was a gold dragon with a unicorn. Just the gold dragon was there, didn't really tell you much about it. I mean, what was going on with the gold dragon? But the encounter, I think, that's always stuck with me throughout the years, because I'm kind of like this with small fuzzy creatures. But there were squirrels in there, and they actually
That's right.
statted the squirrels out, and the squirrels could their touch turned things to gold, and they hoarded gold acorns. And I remember there's like a throwaway line in there where if the squirrel bites you, the character turns to gold. And that was it. Like, that's the end of this, and it's like right on to the next statement. And it's like they don't tell you mechanics wise or anything what that means, how valuable a PC is. I mean, is a gnome worth the same amount as the 6 foot tall fighter? I mean, you would think not, but like, is there a saving throw? Like, nothing of that. So and I remember that encounter, and then that encounter really came home to me. And this is just perfect that I'm following Marzio after this. I was up at Niagara Falls on the Canadian side a couple of years ago, and they have these crazy squirrels up there, these black squirrels. Marzio probably knows what they are, all right? But they could kick the ass of the squirrels we have down here in the United States. These squirrels are like twice the size. They're full black. They have red eyes. They look demonic. And I remember walking past the casino, seeing these squirrels, and I'm like, oh, we got to stat these suckers up. I mean, this is like, these things could rip people apart. So I love it. I mean, I'm really big into the ecosystem and nature and everything. So that's always stuck with me. So the squirrel encounter is something that I will never forget. And I can't wait to see the 5e implementation. I'm kind of hoping there's at least a saving throw involved. But anyway, and hopefully maybe even there's some rules about how much a PC is worth after he's turned to gold and how you can get them back. So
that actually, I mean, one of the great things about Clark Ashton Smith is he's so imaginative. I mean, there's a really cool. So among the other things in here, there's commentary by James Malizzewski, which is called out on the cover. And some of you know James is the guy who wrote the Grognardia, or still writes the Grognardia blog. And he's just a wellspring of knowledge about all things D&D and TSR. But he went through and actually, Castle Amber is basically derived from Clark Ashton Smith's body of work on the Avron. I'm not saying this right, but the Avron French stories.
Yep.
And James actually went through and documented every example of where the original D&D designers had actually sort of, frankly, lifted something from Clark Ashton Smith and then statted it up. So this is really interesting article where you can see every example of, it's as simple as some cases, NPC names, and in other cases, complete monsters that are really distinctive monsters that Clark Ashton Smith actually created in the 1930s, and now they're appearing in a D&D module, decades and decades later. So it's really cool, these connections back to Appendix N literature that even before, I don't know, it's been there forever in gaming, and some of the introductions in here called out pretty clearly. Whether it's dangerous squirrels or giant corpses reconstructed through necromancy.
Yeah, and that's the absolute joy of getting to do these conversions, is to get to play in that sandbox, where we get to actually take something that we remember back from decades and decades ago, and then we get our opportunity to actually play around with it and actually convert it to 5th edition. So and that's why working on these projects is so much fun.
Yeah, cool. And now, Thorn, if you don't mind, show the cover. I mean, we actually have 2 covers to Temple of Elemental Evil. Show the first one, the gray one, please. And we're going to talk a little bit about this. Guys, we have, there's 2 versions of the covers we have. We have the basic Jeff Easley edition, so to speak, of the gray cover. And we'll leave this up for a little bit. Maybe, Chris, Temple of Elemental Evil was, obviously converted from 5e, and you did a huge chunk of that conversion. What was your favorite part of the original 1st edition version, and how did you do that conversion to 5e?
So definitely my favorite part is the Moat House, which was T1. The small dungeon in the swamp. right outside of the village. So many times I've run that probably 4 or 5 times as a game master over the years. Just classic encounters, simple encounters, but classic encounters. You've got there's an ogre, you got your giant frogs at the front. But that was a lot of fun, getting an opportunity to convert that up to 5th edition. And also the village. I mean, the village has some idiosyncrasies to it. Converting a lot of commoners. Obviously, not too many of the villagers actually had stats, but it's crazy. The treasure that the villagers had. I mean, you'll just have this, commoner farmer and his wife and 3 kids, and they have, a necklace worth 6,000 gold pieces, hidden in a hollow in a tree trunk behind their yard. It's just off the wall crazy that you're like, wow, it's like, this doesn't make sense on one hand, but when we do these conversions, we keep everything in there. But we did put some extensive notes on there on like how to probably adjust the treasure. Not that you're probably going to kill the farmer. Well, most characters aren't going to kill the farmer and take his necklace, but you never know. 6,000 GP necklace, it might be tempting to get an official, official warrant for your arrest for something like that. So that was probably my favorite part when like I said, we had a team approach for this. We actually had 4 people working on the conversion for this. Part of being the project manager of that is you get to kind of pick out which parts you want to work on. So I was like, oh yeah, I got the village and I got the moat house, and then assign the other pieces off and everything. So it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a lot of fun. Classic module. And I think most of the people that know Temple of Elemental Evil, I think 95% of them have actually run through the moat house. And then the other 5% actually made it to the dungeon of the Temples of Elemental Evil and actually got through several of those levels. So definitely the classic location.
And what do you think fans will, and I guess I should have said this in case I didn't say it. We're going to, as most of you know, we're going to publish Original Adventures Reincarnated number 6, which will be Temple of Elemental Evil. The manuscript's actually all written and edited, and we're in art stages now. Probably will come out early to mid next year. It'll probably be a 2-volume set because it's going to be so huge. Probably 2 volumes in a slipcase. And I should have mentioned that in the introduction, but that out of the way. And actually, thank you, Harley, for correcting me. The cover is actually by Parkinson. I think I misspoke earlier. But Chris, what do you think fans will like the most about this, our version of it, so to speak?
So when we get to do these conversions to 5th edition, the best part, in my opinion, is we get to add additional material in to the module. So, and we do this in a way that we try to really make it the same, very similar. We kind of blend it in the best. But for those folks who remember the Temple of Elemental Evil, you had the 4 elemental nodes. After you got down to the end of the dungeon, the 4th level of the dungeon, you had these 4 little demi-planes, 1 water, 1 fire, 1 earth, and 1 air. So and in the original module, obviously they ran out of space, so they basically had a map, and then they had like a little outline of here's a bunch of creatures of that theme, and there you go. And then they would numbers on the map, and that was it. And there was like a couple little notes. So we got to fully flesh those out as full dungeons. So each of those gets their own chapter. And they are fully developed. We use the map. We use the encounters that Mr. Gygax and Mr. Menser recommended. If they said, 6 fire giants were in this room, we did 6 fire giants, even though it might not be balanced for 5th and 6th level characters. It's okay. We kind of worked around some of those things, but especially the dragon turtles. Plural. But anyway, so that was the best part of it. The best part of that was actually having this blank canvas and being able to design those levels and design them in kind of a Gygaxian way that kind of fits in with the rest of the adventure. So we're hoping that that's the best part, and that's really the meat and potatoes of the new material, because we got this is about twice the length of you've seen how thick our regular orb modules are. This is about twice the length of that. So yeah, this will probably be, as Joe said, two 300-page books when it's all said and done.
And on that note, actually, Thorne, if you could show the other cover. I mean, the original, between Hamlet and Temple of Elemental Evil, there was the Temple cover, of course, and then there was the, let's see, here we go. Yeah, the Trampier version of the Village of Hamlet cover, and then there was the, why am I blanking on the name?
Was it Rosloff?
No, it wasn't Rosloff. It was Jeff D. The Jeff D version, which also came out of Hamlet later on. Anyway, so the good news is between the slipcover and the 2 volumes inside, we have the opportunity to utilize several different covers. So the question is, I'm just showing you some examples here. We mocked up this version as well, which has the Hamlet art on the Temple of Elemental Evil title. And so I suspect we'll go with the gray cover for the overall cover, which is the slipcase, so to speak. But on the books inside, we might actually mix it up a little bit and, use this chance to show off some of the original art, because there is some cool art from back in the day here that we can show off. Cool. So yeah, this will be really popular. I think everybody loves this adventure, and it's awesome. Once we're at a stage where it's laid out, the art's all done, it's off to the printer, we'll start taking pre-orders. So probably early next year sometime, it's hopefully that stage. So then Chris, actually, Thorne, if you could show the Dungeon Denizens cover, and Chris, maybe you can tell us what the heck is Dungeon Denizens?
So who doesn't love a big chunky monster book? I think most of us game masters love monster books. We love just flipping through them. And this is something, I mean, Joe, you might want to give some background on this. You've always said what about monster books?
Well, I always said I'd never do a DCC monster book, and apparently I'm gonna have to eat that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but you know what? So finally we decided, let's do a monster book, and let's start with a 5e monster book. We have an amazing collection of monsters from all of the previous DCC modules, going back to number 0 all the way up to number 52, back in the 3.0, 3.5 era. So there's something like between those modules and what we've already done with some of the 5th edition modules, we already have probably about 300 potential monsters that we could have for 5th edition conversions. So that's our starting point. They're probably not all going to make it, but we've basically been kicking ideas around, and this kind of ties all in with our 5e open call. People can probably be connecting the dots here. We said we have all these exciting, very large projects, and we need more writers. This is an example of that. We are looking at. Can we tell them what our target number is for monsters?
It's a nice round number.
It's a nice round number. Yeah. How does 500 for 5e sound? So this book is going to have 500 monsters in it, and we're not just going to do, a carrion crawler and a baby one and a mid-sized one and a big one. We're trying to shoot. There's going to be a couple of those, but we're trying to get a lot of unique different monsters, and we need authors for that. We cannot just take one person. We already had one of our regular authors pump out a lot of these monsters, and literally his eyes started bleeding at the end of it. That is true story. Ask Mr. Curtis it sometime.
There's a reason he's not at this panel.
Yeah. But literally at the end of it, when he turned in his submissions, his eyes were bleeding. So that's why we need lots of people. We want to get a lot of fresh talent to work on this. We want to get a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different ideas to create some really awesome monsters. We already have 4 of us working on it, but we still have room for more. So we're going to probably, be sending out some more requests for folks to work on this too. So it's going to be pretty exciting. So between the fact that, we've got some ideas on how we're going to do it format wise, we're going to have some great artwork. We're hoping it's going to be full color.
It'll be full color.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Boss Man says it's going to be full color. So so it's going to be quite the book. It'll be worth it. It's going to take a lot of time and effort. I don't think we've ever done something this big. Obviously, Temple of Elemental Evil was quite large, but this is going to be quite the undertaking from a project management standpoint, from an editing standpoint, from an artwork standpoint. Think about that: 500 pieces of artwork, folks. 500 pieces. Yeah. So So it's going to be great. So we're very, very excited about it.
So just to say a couple things about this. First, there will be 2 versions of this book. So originally it was just going to be a 5e book. And as Chris said, we have so much material to mine from monsters that we published already. I mean, we are literally on number 99 in the published DC series, not counting all the 0.5s and con specials and all that. And every one of those adventures had some number of brand new monsters. So we could easily, pull several hundred monsters simply from the DCC series. Then there's, of course, plenty of room for inspiration for additional new ideas. And originally this was just going to be a 5e book, not just, but it was going to be a 5e book. And then I realized, I said I didn't want to do a DCC monster book because the whole premise of DCC is you create your own monsters and they're distinctive and unique and so on and so forth. But then I realized if I do this as 5e only and not do a DCC book, it's kind of like a disservice to the DCC community because some of them will want that. And on the other hand, a lot of these monsters are essentially, inspired by or even, directly lifted from some of the DCC modules and then statted up. So I was like, all right, fine, we'll do a DCC version 2. So there will be 2 versions of this book. What you're seeing here, this first cover, is the cover of right now the 5e version. And I say right now because this one is by San Julian, but Errol Otis is working on the other cover. So once we have both in hand, then we'll kind of make a call as to which one's going to be the DCC version and which one's going to be the 5e version. But this look that you see right here, many of you know San Julian. He is very famous for a lot of his illustrations back in the 70s, where he painted, among other things, all the Conan novel covers and the covers of Warren magazines like Eerie and Creepy and Vampirella, and so many other things. But this cover design is inspired by his work on those 70s Warren publications, which gives it that really cool vintage look. And then when Errol's done with his, we'll see what it looks like. But what Chris and I talked about with Errol was something resembling that AD&D monster manual look, where they had this sort of creatures in the sky, creatures on the earth, creatures below the earth, and sort of that profile view. So when we're done, one of these covers will end up DCC, one will end up 5e, and then we'll have 2 gigantic hard covers, each with about 500 monsters in them. The art will be in full color. If I talked earlier about the dice Kickstarter that's going on now, if you go to that Kickstarter page and look at the art that's on the dice tubes, Doug Kovacs painted those illustrations, and that look for those color monsters in the dice tubes that's actually the look we're going to go for the monster art inside this book. So Doug was really excited to hear that he gets to paint a lot of cool monsters. And
who doesn't love monsters?
Yeah, I know, exactly. There's a lot of really cool color illustrations of monsters in this book, 500 to be exact. And then it'll work for both DCC and 5e. Yeah, so it's going to be awesome. Now, I'm going to pause for a moment to address a question in the chat. The open call is actually not for artists. The open call is just for the 5e portion, is just for writers and editors. Just to answer that question in the chat. Anyway, Chris, anything else you want to add about Dungeons and Denizens before we sort of close out the 5e section?
No, not just that we're excited about it. We are hoping that some of the new talent that we gather up with the 5e open call, we're hoping that can be an assignment that they can potentially work on. It's going to take us a while. We're about, we're almost halfway through setting everything up so far. So we still got a long way to go in the writing process. And again, it's going to be a large book. It's going to spend quite a bit of time in editing and quite a bit of time in layout and whatnot, because we want to get, we want, one monster per page kind of a deal. It's going to be, it's a challenging project, but I'm looking forward to it. So it's going to be a lot of fun to work on. So
cool. Thanks, Chris, for joining us. Thanks for talking about 5e.
No problem. It's a pleasure.
Talk to you later. Cool. So next, folks, in Thorn, as you look at those covers, I think now go to the one number 8, because we're going to talk about X-Crawl Classics with Brendan LaSalle. So Brendan's online here, and Thorn, if you can bring him in as well. All right, cool. We're working on this in a moment. And then there we go. I see the X-Crawl Classics cover. So everybody, XCC is coming out. And by the way, you might hear my children. They really want to come in here and see what I'm doing. They can hear me talking. So we will keep going. And oh, the door just opened. Sorry, hold please. You guys chat amongst yourselves, or who wants to meet my children. So this is Haven. This is Pierce. Say hi to everybody. Can you say hi? All right. All right, guys. I'm gonna go close the door. I'll be back in a sec.
Mark, say something funny.
Should I go get my kids too?
There you go. We should do that. We should all get our kids.
Yeah, me too.
Hey,
I can bring
where's
my
Brendan?
cats
I
in
can hear
too.
him. I think I can hear Brendan if I do this. To the right. Here we go.
Yeah.
We should have a commercial, but we should be sponsored by something here. It should be like, commercial break.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Sorry that my kids interrupted that, but they are now occupied, and hopefully we can get through the rest of this. So you can see me on the screen with Brendan LaSalle. Hey, Brendan, how's it going?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for writing an awesome game.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about X-Crawl Classics, and you guys can see the art right there. XCC's been in the works for a couple of years, but maybe Brendan, for any like new people out there, maybe just tell them in a nutshell what X-Crawl Classics is all about.
Absolutely. So X-Crawl Classics is the idea is that like a traditional style fantasy world with elves and magic and monsters and wizards grows up, becomes our modern media saturated world, and in a fit of both nostalgia and looking back, and in a way to keep the masses distracted from the fact that they have no rights, they create a televised death sport called X-Crawl, where hardened adventurers go up against real monsters. The dungeons are all artificial, but the challenges are real, and you have adventurers vying to win, fight, and survive against actual challenges. It has all the stuff in a regular dungeon that you would expect: monsters, treasures, hazards, traps, of all different kinds. But it also has the sort of a celebrity culture aspect and an aspect of fame and working the crowd, because it's a sport, and the point of the dungeons is to make money for corporate sponsors. So it has that kind of feel to it.
One of the things I always loved about it was the fact that we design dungeons and we think about ecology and how all these things fit together and so on. But in X-Crawl, you do have a figure who's basically the game master or the dungeon judge, and they get to just, you don't have to have the internal logic. They can put a room full of fire dragons right next to an ice giant, because that's how they can set it up if they so choose to arrange the challenges.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the points, is that I don't have to worry about the dungeon ecology. How do these minotaurs eat? How does the dragon actually fit in and out of this 40 by 40 room he's stuck in? They take the whole wall out to bring that dragon in an X-Crawl, and they've got guys who are professionals who only do that all day long. So so that's one of the things that I don't know. I hope everyone else has as much fun with it as I've had designing it. So.
And I know you've created a lot of rules that sort of get across that televised game show aspect, like the maybe tell people about some of the, I'm just rattling it off here, but the fame rules, the Mojo rules, all the things that help establish the gameplay.
Absolutely. So there is a fame system. Characters earn fame points. They earn it through doing great and heroic deeds and through working the crowd. So everyone has a grandstanding skill where they used to actually get the crowd pumped up and get everybody worked up and going. And the more fame they earn, the bigger a celebrity they are, and they are able to command higher fees and get sent to bigger and more important dungeons. They have a larger chance of being recognized out in public. And there's also a fame burn mechanic where you could spend your fame points to do certain things. Like you could spend a couple of fame points to get just like being a real celebrity. You could spend a little bit of your fame to get police to look the other way when you've been out speeding and caught in trouble for that, or to get a free loan from a casino when you need one, just banking on your celebrity. So it has all of that. It has all those aspects in there. And there's also the other system that's real, comes up a lot is the Mojo Rules, and that's been a part of the game since the original incarnation. So Mojo represents the power of teamwork that raises everybody else up to greater heights than they can ever get to all alone there by themselves. So we have a system that puts that in play that sort of like, allows the players to help out their teammates when they are getting ready to do something, fantastic or super necessary or awesome in any other way. So
that's awesome. Yeah, cool. So, XCC's been in the works for a couple of years, and then the beta rules went live for playtesters, I want to say 2 weeks ago, 1 week ago, something like that. What's it been like to have the beta rules out there for people to see and, getting feedback on it and so on?
It's absolutely amazing. I've had so many people over the last couple of years who are interested in it, and it's so exciting to finally be able to show you a part of the game. There's a lot more than that. I'd say that the beta rules are about like 8% of what is all in the book as far as character classes, monsters, spells, and a couple of dungeons. But it's just amazing. And I've been running it all weekend at Bride of Cyclops Con, and oh boy, I've already found a couple of things. And a couple of stalwart players have seen things in the beta rules and go, maybe, and I'm like, so I already have a list of things that are going to get corrected. So I think the open beta is working the way that it is supposed to do, where I'm starting to get feedback trickling in from people who are either playing with me or who are reading it and playing it on their own. So it's fantastic, and I'm super grateful for everyone taking the time and checking it out and sending me your comments. That's a huge, huge, huge help, and I'm super grateful to you.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, we did a DCC beta. I mean, this is a long time ago, 2011 or whatever it was, and it was incredibly useful. And there were so many things that seemed blindingly obvious in retrospect that you just didn't think about when you were.
Oh, I know.
Or just like, little blind spots you have about the way you play. Something never comes up, and then as soon as you play it in the general public, immediately the holes are obvious. So it's always good to have that kind of feedback.
Yes, indeed. Or just even in some cases, just dumb mistakes, like not having I've got one. There's a spell. One of the new spells is Creature Companion, and I realized finally someone actually maxed it out, and I hadn't seen that happen before. I'd seen it in play, but I hadn't seen someone max it out. And they were like, "Hey, how come my maxed out version has as bad a chance to hit as a first level version, the lowest level version?" So I had just failed to advance just for that one last bracket. I failed to increase his attack and damage. So he had +0 and 1d3 on a 38 spell result or whatever. It's like, that doesn't seem real fair. So so that will get corrected along with a couple
all the other stuff. Okay, good. That's exactly why we do this. That's awesome.
Yes. And it's also a lot of fun. And I hope people are trying it out there and just checking it out.
Yeah. And now, we're doing XCC beta rules as a, preamble to what will eventually be the XCC Kickstarter. So early to mid next year. And I know you've been working on kind of an adventure lineup so that when the Kickstarter launches, people can also get as part of the package, examples of how to play for each level. Tell us about some of those adventures that you put together and how you're thinking about that lineup and so on.
Absolutely. Well, I want there to be a full adventure path when it all comes out. I want you to be able to have adventures taking you from 0 level to the 5th level, all the way up through X-Crawl, through all of the ranks. And so I'm actually the adventure I'm running this weekend, working title, Bay City Firestorm. That's going to be the level 5 adventure that will go along with that adventure path. The adventure I was running last year, the year before that, Please X-Crawl, Don't Hurt Him, which takes place in Detroit. That's going to be part of the path as well. And I'm also looking for, I think it's going to be. I think you'll see some new adventures that you've never seen before, and some retooling of some of the ones that I've been doing since I've been working on X-Crawl Classics. I think you'll see some of those that will all be in there. So.
And I don't want to spill too many beans, but I mean, one of the coolest things for me about how you've been thinking about X-Crawl Classics is that, you've done versions of X-Crawl before, and it's stayed, quote, inside the box, like inside the arena. But there's a broader world out there. And, I remember you were talking about this like literally years ago, where you're talking about, why can't there be unsanctioned crawls? Why can't some dude, go out in the desert and run his own private crawl? And so I know you were thinking about incorporating that idea into some of the adventures. Maybe just where are you thinking that way, and what are some of the other kind of beyond the box crawl ideas that you might have?
Absolutely. So I have run different versions of an illegal crawl that takes place.
Illegal crawl.
It's an illegal crawl. The illegal crawl is just run for gamblers. It's a super high end thing. There's about 50 people who watch it, but every one of them is a
high roller.
Outlaw millionaire, or just a gambling addict with way too much cash on their hands. And in that case, all of the normal rules of X-Crawl are off, and that is when you will find orcs with machine guns and all kinds of other stuff, and traps and things that they absolutely can't do under normal circumstances. I also want to show how X-Crawl is different in other countries in the world. So the X-Crawl takes place for the most part in the North American Empire, where Emperor Ronald I has actually inaugurated the crawl on his own some 25 years ago. So I'm going to show it what it's like, how different countries sort of take on it. And in my home campaign, one of everyone's favorites was the Oz rules, the Australian rules X-Crawl edition, which was very, very different. It was the early stages of it. You have to get through a certain number of rooms without weapons, so it's just a hand-to-hand and magic brawl through the first several rooms until you do that. And I actually have several ideas for adventures that like when I first ran X-Crawl, it was a full campaign, and they did a lot of stuff in the arena, but they also were involved with the military, and they would go on, raids for them, and they got involved with spies and with criminals and things, and all of the other things that would take place in a world with the kind of world that could support a death sport with magical monsters and every other thing, all of the strangeness to it and such. So I've had a ton of fun, rolling this one, and I want to show a lot more of the world outside of the arena in X-Crawl Classics.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. That's great. And for the audience out there, you've seen the cover art. You can download the beta rules right now. If you go to goodmangames.com, look on the right-hand side. It's like the second or third sort of graphic down on the right-hand side.
Yeah. Hey, can I say hey to our X-Crawl teams from this weekend?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Great reminder.
Yeah. So this weekend, we saw great turnouts and great action from the Mississippi Maulers, the Rocky Mountain Road Warriors. They all did a fantastic job. The other guys, which were the put together team, and I'm missing one. The other guys, and the Bay City Bridgeburners, the local team from San Francisco. So thank you for everybody who showed up and played X-Crawl with me this weekend, and for all the comments I got and for all the feedback. I'm really, really, really pleased. So thank you all so much for showing up and playing my game with me. I had a lot of fun.
Actually, that's a great reminder that we had talked. Brandon and I have talked about the idea of we do DCC demo nights once a week for new players. And we talked about the idea of doing an XCC exhibition night or whatever, starting maybe sometime in the winter. And once a week, you can just play a game with Brendan and learn the rules and rotate. It's not like a campaign. It rotate through people each week, but a great chance to try out the beta rules, give feedback.
Yeah.
Watch goodmangames.com for more on that, and we'll work our way up towards the Kickstarter next year.
Coming at you soon.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later. All right, so I'm gonna Thorne, if you can pull up the Tales from the Magician's Skull graphic, and then let me know when we should bring in Howard. Everybody, all right. Everybody, hold please while we set ourselves up for our next guest. He's joining now. Hold one sec. Off. All right, cool. All right, Howard, you ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right, great. Everybody, our next guest on the show is Howard Andrew Jones, editor of Tales from the Magician's Skull, as well as many, many other things. And he wrote a whole bunch of good stories and books and stuff too. But anyway, hey, Howard, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Yeah. So for everybody watching this on Twitch, I'm sure you've seen Howard already a couple times this weekend on the various Sword and Sorcery Writers Tracks shows that we've been doing. And he's here today to talk about some specific announcements related to Tales from the Magician's Skull. So Howard, I mean, you can probably guess this question's a setup because you know the answer. But now that issue number 5 of Tales from the Magician's Skull is pretty much wrapped up and about to go to the printer, what do we have to look forward to for issue number 6?
Well, issue number 6 is going to be a big surprise because we have some really exciting official word to release. Gosh,
I know it's hard to even say it, isn't it?
You tell them the news, and I'll tell them who's writing it.
Okay, so everybody, if you know anything about the history of sword and sorcery, and I consider myself a novice in this compared to people like Howard, but the phrase sword and sorcery comes from a man named Fritz Leiber. And many of you, if you're a Goodman Games fan, you know that name because he wrote Lankmar and created Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, and has just been a fixture in fantasy literature for a long time and a fixture in gaming ever since TSR produced their Lankmar supplement, I want to say in 1983. But if you're in gaming, you know Lankmar, you know Fritz Leiber, you know Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. And many great writers in that genre, such as Robert E. Howard, have had versions of their characters published for decades by other authors. For example, Conan stories have been written by, for a long time, the Robert E. Howard Conan stories were out of print and it was all other people writing Conan. Whereas for Fritz Leiber, the Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser stories have always been written only by Fritz Leiber. I think actually, if I remember correctly, there was one authorized novel.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one authorized story like 30 or 40 years ago, and that was it. So you can, if you love these characters, you could only get a fairly limited amount of their adventures because it was just what Fritz Leiber wrote in his lifetime. But we have been working with the estate of Fritz Leiber for quite some time now on licensed Lankmar RPG products. And they actually said that based on what a good job we've done with that they would be happy to let us also publish fiction. So we're very excited to announce that Tales from the Magician's Skull #6 will include all new Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser fiction authorized by the estate of Fritz Leiber for only the second time in the history ever of sword and sorcery fiction, as well as an ongoing commitment to publish additional stories, which was all made possible by this awesome magazine and Howard doing a great job producing like just really quality curation of amazing stories. So it's pretty cool.
The writer we approached was the one that I think he's the perfect fellow. He's Nathan Long. You might know him from his Warhammer work. And that's how I got to know him. I don't know how many of you have read any of the Warhammer Sword and Sorcery, but he's one of my very favorites of all the Warhammer writers. He's actually one of my very favorite modern sword and sorcery writers, and I wish more people were reading him. Of course, he's appeared already in The Magician's Skull, but now he's going to appear writing Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. And he was just as thrilled as we were. I've known him for a number of years now, and I knew that he was a huge fan of Leiber. I asked him if he had anything he wanted to say about it. And he says, more than any other writer, more than Tolkien, more than Howard, more than Moorcock, Fritz Leiber instilled in me my love of fantasy and sword and sorcery in particular. His delight in wordplay, whimsy, and wit shaped my writing to this day, and I consider him one of the true immortals of the field. Thus, it was a great and terrifying honor when Howard Andrew Jones and Joseph Goodman asked me to try my hand at Fafhrd and Grey Mouser pastiche, and I feel presumptuous even to have accepted. I can only hope that my story is received in the spirit it was written, not as an addition to the canon, but as a tribute to it. A love letter to my first and fondest inspiration, Fritz Leiber.
Yeah, and the story's great. Howard has an encyclopedic knowledge of Fritz Leiber, far more than I ever will. So he went back and forth with Nathan on 3 or 4 rounds of revisions just to get the tone exactly right and make sure all the details are exactly right. So I think that if you're out there and you are a, well, as you know, here at Goodman Games, we have a lot of very opinionated people who have very strict standards for everything, really. But among other things, for getting Lankmar right, so to speak. We wanted to be the first publisher to finally get Lankmar right. And I think we got it right in the RPG sense, and I think we'll get it right in the fiction space as well. So the story's terrific. It'll appear in issue #6. And we publish these every 6 months. Number 5 is about to go to the printer, so issue 6 is about 6-7 months out. And it's something to look forward to. Doug Kovacs is working on the art for the cover, since it'll be his, carrying on from his work on the Lankmar box set. And that's actually a good segue to mention, since we have rights to do RPG material and fiction material, we also have the rights to do RPG material for the new fiction we're publishing. So it's also possible and highly probable that at some point we'll have stats and other such material for the magic items and characters and creatures and so on that appear in the Lankmar fiction inside Magician's Skull.
I'm
How
absolutely thrilled. Nathan is
Yeah.
absolutely the right guy for this. I think with him at the helm, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser are going to sound like themselves and act like themselves, and Lankmar is going to feel like itself. It's good stuff.
Yeah, actually, I mean, having read the story myself, it feels like straight out of something that Fritz Leiber would have written. Like if you published it without a byline, you wouldn't know that it was a different author writing it, which is exactly what we want to have. That's what we want to have happen. Nathan did a great job. Howard, how do you feel? I mean, I know you're, a student of Fritz Leiber.
Well, I'm very excited. No one can ever exactly duplicate such a distinctive voice, but they can get the characters right and they can get the feel right. They can be true to the world and the characters, and that's what Nathan's done. And by God, sometimes I think the prose echoes him too. It feels right, and I think people who are big fans are going to enjoy it.
That's awesome. And then the other news that we wanted to talk about was that, we've been publishing The Magician's Skull now for, 5 issues, working on #6. And it was, the content's largely been pulled from sort of, known writers in the industry. But Howard, our great Lord the Skull has told us that he's finally ready to receive submissions from the general public. Do you want to tell everybody about that?
Right, the decree went forth, and so we've been ramping up, trying to figure out how best to fulfill the Skull's wishes. And so we decided we're going to open the floodgates on January 22nd, the birthday of Robert E. Howard, and we're going to start accepting submissions to the magazine. It'll be a limited window through April Fool's Day, which is, of course, April 1st. So those of you who wish to draft us up some great sword and sorcery, I hope you'll take a look at our submission guidelines, which we'll be posting here in just a couple of days. And start drafting some of your best stuff. I don't want you to send me your trunk stories. I don't want to send stuff that's been rejected from everywhere else. I want you to get me your best stuff, because only the best stuff is going to please the skull. Otherwise, it's probably going to face immolation.
Yeah, Howard and I have now achieved third from last and second to last for immolation status, which is to be envied. So when the skull takes over the world, we'll die close to the end of that experiment. And we want to stay on that tail end of the experience. So we need to keep giving the skull a good fiction, no bad fiction.
Absolutely. I think that's paramount.
Yeah. So everybody, if you're a fiction writer out there, again, this is fiction. This is stories, not games, not poetry, just fiction stories like what you see in the magazine. But you'll see in a couple days, it'll get posted the full details of the open call. So in addition to looking for 5e writers and editors that we discussed earlier, we'd like sword and sorcery fiction writers. And I mean, if you've read the magazine, if you haven't read the magazine, obviously read it before you submit, but Howard's done an amazing job of picking out great stories. It's really impressive. And I'm really excited to publish it because it's like a treat to read. I get to read all the stories in draft form, then I get to read them again, like several months later when I get the magazine, and it's great. So I want to keep up that really high standard of just great quality stories.
It's really exciting to be doing this with you, and you're selling yourself short. You've helped me make some tough choices on some of these tales, and you have great suggestions as well. I tell you what, it's just a thrill to be involved with you and the Skull doing this together, and our great cover artists and our great behind the scenes folks. It's a delight. I hope that more readers will find their way to these stories. So often when I see people talking about sword and sorcery, they're just rereading the same old stories over and over and over. You know what? I love those old stories, but it is just a blast bringing new stories that draw on some of those same inspirations and trying to present it to a modern audience. I want the modern audience to expand. The Skull would be delighted. He would pull out a big band with gong players and trumpeters and especially trombonists and electric guitarists to get the word out.
Yeah. And actually, if you're watching on Twitch, what you see there on the screen is the cover to issue number 5, which has many awesome stories in it. But that cover art is actually based on one of the stories inside. That cover is by Sam Julian as well. And we're really hitting our stride. I feel like there's a couple. Issue 5 will feel like issue 4 if you've been a subscriber, but there's a couple of small details that have changed. And I feel like we're sort of coming into our own and really finding the right format for it. And so 6 is really the perfect place to start publishing Linkmar fiction because the magazine's really picking up steam in a great way.
Right. I think we've gotten more and more used to what we have to do and how to communicate with each other. Less reportedly, our layout tech is getting used to all of our little little issues we might accidentally introduce or forget to introduce in the case.
Italics. Who needs italics?
Yeah. Well, we're getting the process down, so we're gonna open the floodgates.
Cool. So everybody start honing your submissions. And if you didn't already know the birthday of Robert E. Howard, shame on you. But we will open submissions on his birthday and close them on, what did the Skull say? The day that all mortals declare foolish.
To all mortals.
Yes, April Fools. Cool. Howard, anything else you want to add before we close out our segment on the Magician's Skull?
No, just carry on. I'm delighted.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks for all the awesome seminars at the con this weekend.
Oh, my pleasure.
Cool. All right. Talk to you later.
Take care.
Okay. All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. We're going to keep going with a couple more guests to talk about a couple more things. We have actually, I saw some questions in the chat about DCC Dying Earth, and I think now would be a great time to talk about that. So let's pull on. Oops, Thorne, everything okay? Okay, all right. Let's pull on real quick. Mark Bruner, and we're going to chat a little bit about Dungeon Crawl Classics Dying Earth. So, hey, Mark, how's it going today?
Pretty good. A little tired.
A little tired. Why are you tired? What's up? What's going on?
We'll talk more about it later tonight, but we just finished another epic tournament for the DCC Open this year. So it was a lot of fun, but kept us up late at night. Yeah,
no, I mean, it's like the authentic Gen Con experience. We're just as underslept, even though we're at home in our own beds.
Yeah. You still have to get up and make pancakes for the kids in the morning, though. Or you have to, in addition to all the other con stuff. So
No, yeah, I mean, just as an aside, I think in some ways it's actually easier traveling to Indianapolis to do a con than it is to also have to walk the dog and feed the kids and have household responsibilities while trying to also, as you saw, as my children interrupted, trying to also do a con. So, yeah, cool. So, Mark, switching over to DCC Dying Earth. So, you've been working on this for a couple of years, but just for new viewers out there who may not have heard about it, just tell us in a nutshell what DCC Dying Earth is all about.
Yeah, and for those of you that know the stories, this is the DCC source book and setting for the Dying Earth stories by Jack Vance. And what we're really trying to do is capture the feel of the stories where it's the end of time, or there's a essentially the Earth is at its twilight days, and civilizations have come and gone. Millions of cities have risen and fallen, and this is the stories of Kugel and Rialto and Pandaloom, and what we're trying to do is give up a kind of a sandbox environment for bringing that to your DCC table. So we've got character classes that are inspired by the novels and stories, and we've got many spells. What we're trying to do is both capture the feel, but also take the hints and sort of the words that are part of Jack Vance's stories, and expand on them, because there's not a lot of detail in the novels as far as like what different things do, and it's really a kind of our open environment as authors to say, well, what cool thing can we do that's inspired by the novels, and make it a DCC version of that. So we've been working on it for a couple of years, myself along with a team of authors, and it's been great.
And in some ways, I mean, it's a setting supplement, but in some ways it's almost a magic supplement. A significant chunk of the word count is spells, magic items, magic rules, etc.
Yeah. Because I think one of the areas that players are always looking for are, more opportunities for spells and spell casting, but also just expanding on the rules of magic is kind of a fun thing, because, how does the rules of magic change, over time, or in this setting where wizards are not so much, the DCC wizards, but ones that sit down and memorize and force spells into their mind. What does that mean, from a standpoint of a new class, and how do they adapt to that? So we have a whole volume that's dedicated just to magic, and this will be that's the second volume of 3 volumes. That's going to be the part of the core work.
And as I recall, you also had a vocabulary appendix.
Yeah.
I mean, when you read Jack Vance, I recently reread Dying Earth. Well, it's been like 6 or 7 months now, but I reread the original book just to I don't know, it's great writing, and just to keep it fresh in my mind. And even though I've read that book several times before, I still couldn't remember all the vocabulary, and I had to make a list and sit there and look up words as I went through it, because him and Clark Ashton Smith have just incredible vocabularies. And but as I recall, you made a list of all the Vancian words, and were making a point. Like the Dying Earth manuscript you produced reads like the Dying Earth books that Vance actually wrote.
Yeah, that was actually a seed that we gave to all the contributing authors. Was here's the 400 Vancian words. Your job is to take this language and make sure that it's part of what the feel of the book. And as editor, I was also trying to ensure that we were taking that to the next step. As far as making sure it did feel Vancian in the words and language. So you're going to see a lot of that, but we also included that vocabulary list in one of the appendices, so that users, the readers could take that and actually, have a key if they get lost, or they're not quite as fresh on their Vancian vocabulary as some of the readers might be.
I mean, yeah, only Vance could be fresh on Vancian vocabulary. It's amazing. So how did you capture the feel of Dying Earth? I mean, it's an interesting series of novels, because there's not even continuity in characters all the way through. It kind of jumps around a bit. Like, how'd you get the feel right for the setting?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was starting with the vocabulary, the vocabulary and beginning of the words, because that's so much of what Vance is for me, is that first experience of reading it and remembering, the original D&D modules, and seeing those kind of gems of words that would pop out and be something like, I don't know what that means, but whatever it is, I'm going to grab a hold of it in my mind and carry it for the next 20 years, and so it's that kind of element, and I think what we tried to do was take those words and really expand, like I said, on the little nuggets of hints of information that are present, to take a spell and build off of it, from just a title, right? Or what does it mean to for this wizard who's got this knowledge passed down from, or maybe stolen, right? From his rivals, and
Yes.
What is the spell's practical effect? And you're right, because it varies so much. There are the early stories, which are stories of Turgeon and some of the heroes that are much more short stories, and then it evolves over time to be more kind of an adventure series with the different settings in like Kugel and Rialto. And so what we try to do is really evolve the way it's translated in DCC to allow you to explore any of those, right? Any of those kind of portals to the world. We didn't want to have like this sort of progression idea where you might have this sort of like beginning class and kind of go up to the Rialto class and things like that. What we're really trying to do is capture just the wildness and randomness of all these things intermingling at the end of the world. And there's time travel, there's spells, obviously, and then there's just artifacts, which are these strange inheritances from the times before, where it could be kind of like a setting for like a kind of mutant type environment, because we've got these cities that have a legacy going back aeons, and so what does that mean? So you could easily translate this to to taking these rules and applying them on the Purple Planet, or applying them to Mutant Future, because each of these settings is sort of possible within the world of Dying Earth. It's all happened many times before, in essence.
Yeah. Man, you summed it up really well. I should tell everybody that when I don't have the exact quote handy, but when we communicated with the estate of Jack Vance, and it was Vance's son, who, do you remember what he said, Mark? He wrote back, he gave Mark and the team a huge compliment and said they had done one of the best adaptations of Dying Earth that he'd ever seen.
And getting that note was just like, it was such a benefit, getting to see the son's perspective, or Jack Vance's son's perspective on the work that we had done and the effort we put in. So I was really pleased that we'd captured at least some of that spirit.
Yeah, Mark and team did not only an index of all the vocabulary, but an index of every location, spell name, proper noun, creature, like an incredible indexing work to ensure that they properly accounted for everything in the setting that we would then want to either create rules for or account for somehow in the rules. And when we did the Lankmar project, that's how Michael and team wound up discovering that the maps that had been published by TSR of Lankmar were actually incorrect in multiple places, because TSR did a map of Lankmar and every publisher ever since then just copied their map. Whereas Mike actually reread the book 7 times and drew out a map based on every single reference to a location that was made in the books. And then when he compared that map to TSR's maps, he found out that TSR's maps didn't match in many cases. And I think we'll see what comes out of Mark and team's work, but I feel like you guys have done such a scholarly job of capturing the setting that in many ways it'll probably be one of the best adaptations ever done, because there have been other RPG adaptations, but I'm personally looking forward to seeing this one.
Yeah, I am too, and I can't wait till it gets in the hands of the fans.
Yeah. So if you're watching on Twitch, the cover art you're seeing there is Doug's drawing of the cover, or painting of the cover, and that'll be on Kickstarter probably middle of next year, because this is a big project where it'll have a box set as well as a whole bunch of modules, and we're still working on the last couple of adventures to get them completed before we do the Kickstarter. But Mark, since you've had the chance to run a lot of Dying Earth games and or hear about a lot of the playtests from some of the other authors who have run their own adventures, what are some of your favorite stories that kind of summed up, Dying Earth, some of the playtest stories you heard?
Yeah, so similar to Lankmar, Dying Earth is intended to be a setting that's a little bit smaller groups, right? Because that's, the stories are all focused on like kind of a single character, single individual that's exploring or going through. So we wanted to expand on that idea a little bit, make it obviously suitable for tables. But a lot of that is just taking these small groups of players who are very enthusiastic about the novels and the stories, and creating the space where they can actually take the language and the interactions with the rules and recreate that Dying Earth feeling. I remember one playtest, and this kind of goes back a couple of years, because I was playtesting a higher level adventure, and one of the things I was really worried about was I'm going to be playtesting with 4 wizards essentially, right? Which is always like its own kind of risk, because then what's going to happen when you put 4 5th level wizards in a room?
Yeah.
And it was at a Gary Con. I remember, when I got to the table, there were only 2 players there, and I was like, oh man, I really want to see what happens, when we get the full team, and it was designed for 4 players, and I was like, okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and go, because the other players didn't show for whatever reason. They had, I never heard back from that group, but these 2 players immediately they sit down and they are inhabiting the magicians, that are part of the stories. Kind of like bickering with each other and bickering with all the interactive NPCs that we have. and it just became this like rolling narrative, right? And kind of building on the all the elements of the stories we were putting together and assembling. And it really wasn't so much about the specific rules at the time, but that was the framework that was allowing them to do that. They brought so much of that themselves, and I really expect that this is going to be what the players that are really into Dying Earth, these rules are intended to provide that framework so that you can have those stories at your table. And at the end of the session, it was a great session because we got to see sort of the interactions of these high level magician characters with their memorized smells and their sandistons, and they kind of like all these magical things that they could do to solve problems quickly, like a Rialto does, just sort of like bring on summon me this, or and give me the solution as a way. But that has consequences in a way. All magic has consequences, and I think Dan is very good about that. At the end of the session, one of the players just handed me essentially his vocabulary list, at the end of the session. And it was
That's
like,
cool.
this is what I came to the game prepared with, and and it was just this amazing sort of like passing on of this player's like own version of the advancing vocabulary, and just being able to take that and kind of now I this connection to the players who are doing the same thing in their home games. It was a lot of fun to see.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that theme of bickering wizards is so just like a thread that runs through so much of Dying Earth. In the original, was it one of the red cover D&D edition? There's this Errol Otis image in one of the early D&D books. Remember the image of the three wizards who are fighting over the treasure and baubles? If you, was it one of the original red cover D&D editions from like the early 80s? But I was talking to Errol about that once, and Errol's a huge fan of Jack Vance, and that image was directly inspired by some Jack Vance story he'd read. So I didn't show them in this panel. We're just showing this one cover, but just to keep everybody in the loop, Errol was really excited to hear about this project. So of the adventure modules, he's on the art for, I forget how many, 3 or 4, but there's going to be a lot of really cool cover on the adventure modules by Errol Otis, as well as several others, because everybody loves Dying Earth, and who wouldn't want to illustrate them?
Yeah. And it's been great to see that artwork come in, because it often inspires the work itself. As the authors are putting together their final drafts, getting to see the cover, it's like, oh yeah, now I can put a vision together about what this module is actually going to bring to the players.
Yeah, cool. Well, Mark, I'm really looking forward to it. I think as soon as we get, I don't know if I mentioned, but the editing's in process for the Dying Earth manuscript, and editing the manuscript on its own is a ton of work, because you have to not only review all this information and process all the settings and characters and words and so on, and then make sure they align across the manuscripts as well as the adventure modules. But Jen's working on the editing, and should have that by late January. And then once that's done, we can get into layout and art, and then start working our way towards the Kickstarter. So I think this will be a really cool project that everybody's going to want to see.
Well, it's been great to work on. So thanks so much for pushing forward with it. And it's amazing to see all the artwork come in and all the enthusiasm from all the fans. So really appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. All right, cool. Talk to you later. Go back to judging, wrangling tournament people. And actually, if you're going to be online in a couple hours, join us at, was it 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern for the closing ceremonies, where Mark, along with Terry and Harley, will announce the winners of the tournament, which I'm sure some of you guys are waiting to find out. Cool. Thank you, Mark. And now we're going to go on to one of our final segments of today's broadcast. What's new with Goodman Games? We're going to talk a little bit about DCC number 100 with Harley Stroh. So let's bring up the cover art and bring up Harley. And Thorin, let us know when we're live. And for those of you who don't already know this, we've talked about this before at a couple seminars. The name of the adventure, the music of the spheres is chaos, and there's a little bit of a nuclear escalation game here at Goodman Games, where when it comes to spinning maps, certain people try to outdo each other. So DCC number 50, I think it was by Monty Cook, and had a map with I think 2 spinning wheels, 1 or 2, I think 1. Then the Chain Coffin came along, and Michael Curtis managed to create a player handout that had 2 spinning wheels. So then Harley Stroh, not to be outdone, has created an adventure that has a map with 3 spinning wheels and officially qualifies as a board game, and I need to find a new printer. So let's bring on Harley, and we can talk about this. How's it going, Harley?
It's great. It's good to see you guys.
Good.
It's like
awesome.
SNL most frequent host. I'm like the guy with DCC 100's back again.
Yeah, and that's probably my fault for not getting it through, but it's also like, it's an amazing project and just a unique project. And I know if you're watching on Twitch, you're seeing the cover art, which is awesome in and of itself. And that's Doug's wraparound cover that fits the theme of the adventure. But It's too bad the cover art's so cool, and my like head's covering up one of the coolest parts of the art.
I
There
know.
you go.
Yeah, you, like
Okay, cool.
if Doug knew we had obscured the art, like
Yeah, I know. It's an amazing cover. It's actually a double wide cover, which Twitch won't convey perfectly, but when you see it in print, it'll be awesome. But Harley has described, I mean, just tell us about this amazing module, Harley.
well, first there's not one, not two, not three, but 4 spinning wheels.
Oh, did I get it wrong? It is 4. I
Well,
couldn't remember if it was
you're
3
gonna
or
have
4.
you're gonna have to get your bid again on whoever's gonna print this thing.
Okay.
So yeah, so DCC 100. Well, I don't know. I'll let Doug's art speak for it. So
Actually,
this is-
Thorin, sorry,
yeah.
Thorin, can you make Harley's picture really big on Twitch so they can see what he's about to show up? Because Harley actually has a physical mock-up. All right, cool, awesome.
All right. So this is I can't tell you, Joseph, how excited I am like to see this. Like, it's the same joy that I had when I saw Doug's art for for sailors, like the same like chaos storm of black ink, like it's just beautiful. So so this is the map, the spinning map for the core of what DCC 100 is. And what's cool about this, Joseph, and this is why it's taken me so long to write it, is that this is it's a puzzle, it's a dungeon map, and it's also a way for the players to use their characters to solve the adventure, right? So like okay, so on one hand, all right, you guys all
Wait,
know this,
Harley, did I just see that map spin? My goodness, show me that again.
no, there are 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. so what we're looking at, okay, so the theophages trying to shake free the shackles of the gods, like refusing to surrender their destiny to the gods, have burrowed out the inside of the largest mountain in Erith, the Sagarmatha. And within it, they've made this alembic, right, where they're going to distill the elements of fire, earth, and water. And air is missing for a very key reason, but we won't reveal that to our listeners just yet. Anyway, so they're distilling these 3 elements, mixing them with chaos, raw chaos, like drawn from the very furthest reaches out of time, out of space, beyond anything materially existing. And they're distilling them and creating a physical body embodiment for that chaos to take root in, but bereft of air, that chaos has no soul, right? And so the original plan was to take these elements, mix them with chaos, and create a monster that the theophages could employ to destroy creation and get free of the gods, because they want to own their own destiny. How unfortunately, things went south, and this is laid undisturbed for thousands of years, but that whole time, chaos has continued to dribble down from outside of time, and the 3 elemental channels have continued to fill, and so the monster has grown greater and greater. And so, bereft of soul, bereft of any obligation to the material world, it's mixing fire, earth, water, and chaos, and distilling inside this alembic. And so that's what the players get to deal with. Now, so. Like, okay, whatever. Anybody can make a spinning map. That's cool.
Not quite anybody, Harley. Not quite anybody.
I mean, but bear with me. All right. So there's elements of the dungeon that can only be accessed when the characters succeed in rotating the map in the proper way. So there's one room here that you can only get to when you spin this elemental circle, and then make your way back through here and then back through there. But like as it's initially encountered, at least in this permutation, it's impossible to make it through here, so you can't actually access this chamber. Okay, so that's one thing. So that's a spinning map. Whatever. That's cool. And were we not Goodman Games, we might stop there. But these are alchemists, right? Trying to throw free the shackles of God. And so this alembic also exists within a zodiac, so you have, wolf, goat, lion, and worm. And so what's happening is as the PCs are adventuring, we'll just for ease, we'll just say, we'll just see that they're in goat. so the warrior classes are ascendant. For goat. I'm sorry, not goat, wolf. Let's see. All right, there we go. Let's put them in worm, right? Because that's the one that's gonna make the most sense to folks. Okay, so the beasts are descending, minerals are rising, gods are nadir, and demons are apex. So monsters are suffering under this. Warriors and dwarves, they're not going to suffer any changes. Traps a little bit. So clerics, when they're adventuring down in this and in the worm of the zodiac, they're miserable, right? Like their spell checks are -2 dice. They're suffering corruption all the time. But wizards and elves, the demonic forces, they're able to cast spells really well. And so what that means is that as the players attempt to solve this dungeon, they can say, "Oh my God, right now, my wizard really needs to hit this spell." And so they work the alembic and crank. You're down there in the worm, or maybe you need to be up in the goat to like heal somebody. So so crank, and it's producing all these changes. Okay, well now our cleric can attempt to cast a spell, and the odds are really well the spell is going to go off. And so the circles, they're working on the map. They're also working on the PCs. They're transforming the PCs throughout the adventure. But the third part that is really cool is that the cycles, the spinning of this elemental. Maybe I should look at the computer. Can you guys even hear me? Anyways,
We can hear you. We're good.
As like the original purpose of this alembic, recall, was to distill these elements along with chaos. And so while the characters have the opportunity to really work on the challenges, like, okay, well, our warriors need to be fine. Okay, well, we're gonna move over here, with the wolf, our warriors are gonna be kicking ass. Well, as this alembic continues to distill, there's only so many times that it can go through its cycle before whatever is lurking here in the base of the largest mountain on Aerith, from chaos, and fire and water and earth, and utterly devoid of divine, devoid of air. There's only so long, and then until this thing erupts in the center. So really the adventure gives the PCs the tools to hang themselves at the same time that they're reveling in their own power. And at the same time, we're making a cool spinning up adventure. So I'm stoked, and it works. Like it all. Like I was so amazed. Like Doug was sending me screenshots, and he's like, "Yep, sure enough, the spinning works." And because it's the dice chain, it's really easy to adjudicate. It's not like, well, wizard, you get to pick out 2 extra spells of 10th level. It's like, no. Just give the wizard +2 dice, and he or she is infinitely more powerful. And at the same time, our cleric is rolling a D16 and trying not to get a disapproval on a 1, 2, or 3, and like the cleric's hating life. And so how do you balance that as players? Anyways, so that's obviously I'm really excited about it. And that's just from Doug's like Chaos Storm map. Like I can't wait to see, the part that I love about this is when I get to see, it living in other people's heads, and their visions are so much cooler than my own. And so like when the art, like what you showed with Doug's art starts to come back, and eventually the cool part, it's actually written, Joseph. It's all done.
Well, and honestly, the module's written. It's now been edited, and this thing alone was a monster to playtest and edit, because in order to. It's so easy to get the maps wrong. I mean, your version of the maps then had to be transcribed by Doug, and you have to think as you do it about each map can rotate 360 and the whole map can rotate 360.
Yeah.
So the maps alone were an amazing amount of work for everybody. And then, as you mentioned, the fact that characters, their aspects can alter as they go through the adventure. I mean, it's an impressive adventure. One of the comments in chat said it best. I feel like I'm in an algebra lecture, only way cooler.
But it's cool because it's all very manageable thanks to the dice chain. I mean that's the mechanic that solves it all. It's like, well, you're not rolling a D20, wizard. You're rolling a D12. I'm so sorry. Good luck on making that spell check with your D12. And so I don't know. It was a joy to write, and it was a joy to like pour and to see like the love that Doug poured into it, and to make encounters that were really exciting to me. And then to really honestly to have the time it took to kind of layer all these things together. It's not like hey guys, we need DC 100 by 3 months from now, and we could do that. But to like, I checked my email, Joseph. It was October 28th, 2014.
Was it really?
I was, and I said for Joseph, I sent you a link to a blog post on White Dwarf 95, which had a flexi disc in it.
That's right.
And I emailed you, and I was like, dude, for DCC 100, we have to include a flexi disc. And you're like, man, that's a long ways off. Maybe DCC 90. Anyhow, so 7 years later, we're there, and I couldn't be more excited.
I think it's been worth it. So yes, on my end now, I'm sending, starting the dialogue with a printer because I don't want to do this. I mean, it should be really cool. It shouldn't come with like assembly required and be lame by the time you're done putting it together. So I think we need to go to basically a board game manufacturer, and this needs to be effectively a board game with spinning wheels. They normally do Monopoly, and now they're going to get vaguely satanic cult symbols on their map, or whatever it might be. But it's going to be a different kind of project than what Goodman Games has done in the past. But I think it's going to be worth it, and it's going to be, it is an awesome adventure for those of you who have had the chance to actually play it with Harley or some of the other playtesters. And it's going to turn out cool.
Yeah, and it starts out so simply. Like, I mean, I can talk about this all night, but like, so the PCs are adventuring, and then was some part of their prior adventure, they find this scroll. Okay, well, that's fine. They found a little bit of treasure, and they get to open it up, and then they, other people want that scroll. It's like a pulp story, right? Like Indiana Jones. He finds something random, he doesn't care about it, he throws it in a stack of books, and the next thing you know, some assassins are trying to take him out. You're like, why is this? And then it spins you off on an adventure. So the whole thing stems from a very, very simple beginning. I think the first encounter is another bar in Punjab. Yes. And based off of that, it just like escalates until you're at the top of the world, trying to find your way into this enormous alchemical alembic where, every time you rotate it, comets are shooting overhead, and, cults are, killing themselves in mass. It's a lot of fun.
It's awesome. So everybody, this will be out hopefully mid to index year, as soon as we have all the, physical reality sorted out and we can cost it out appropriately and get the Kickstarter going. But yeah, the cover art's done. It's written, edited. I'm going to start doing interior art soon. I just got to figure out how to make it. I guess I could take the Malizzewski approach of hiring lots of Boy Scouts to like.
Well, and that's the thing, right? I was so scared when I was like assembling this. Is like, I know a Boy Scout could have done this better. Joseph always told me that we needed to hire Boy Scouts. Yes. I'm not sure how the Boy Scouts go home. They show this to mom and dad. Like, what'd you work on today, buddy? How'd you get that occult patch?
Here's how I got the upside down star patch.
Yeah, but it's cool. Like, it is physically assembled. I mean, I love that we're going to print it and make it material in a way that DCC 100 deserves. But it's also cool that, I mean, I think there could be a way that I can't screen share with right now, but I've been loading it all onto Roll20, and you can rotate objects, and so it spins perfectly. And that I don't know, it's been really cool. And so like it can be run digitally, and it can be run, like. I could email you a PDF. You could print it out in a cardstock, and by the end of tonight, if you had some Brads, you could be spinning this whole thing around.
Yeah,
it's really cool. Like
it's really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Doug did a fantastic job, and Terry Wayne and Mark Wayne and Jen Wayne, and you coming up with the original idea, like all these amazing people saying, well, this is important, and this is important, and this is important. Like, to survive, kind of that brain trust of. Like Terry will destroy any idea he doesn't love. And so, to be able to take those comments like, oh yeah, this is 100% right. And then to come out on the other side with something that you're passionate about is really cool.
Awesome. So everybody look for more details on this on the website soon, and we'll start building up to it. Once we have it all ready, it'll come out next year, and it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Harley. Anything else you want to say before we close out this segment?
No, just thanks for bearing with me. I got to come up with something else for next year.
Actually, I think maybe we should start planning what our 2026 release is going to be.
DCC 200, I call it.
Okay, all right. It's going to have at least 9 spinning maps. So, come on, by the time we get there. So.
Awesome.
All right, cool. Thanks, Harley.
Thank you, guys.
Cool. So, folks, just a couple closing comments before we finish out this segment. Actually, I should tell you guys the Boy Scout story since we referenced that. As you know, I've worked with Malizzewski to sell game science dice for many years on the website, at cons, and so on. and this is Lou only does business by phone. We've tried email, and I eventually had to print out my emails and snail mail them to him because he wasn't able to get the emails. So I was talking to him on the phone once. And I wanted to buy some dice for, I think it was Gen Con or something, and I forget the exact prices, but he would sell me like his box of dice, and they were like maybe $25 a box, but if that was uninked. And he quoted me the inked price, and the inked price was something like, $55, like substantially more expensive than the uninked price. I was like, Lou, that's a pretty big jump. Why are the inked ones so expensive? And he said, well, all the Boy Scouts grew up. I was like, what does that have to do with the price of inked dice? And he said, well, back when he ran Game Science, his labor supply for inking dice was the local Boy Scout community. He would apparently he had this whole pay system based on the number of faces on the die. So I think for like a 20-sider, they got 20 cents, and for a 4-sider, they got 4 cents or something. But he hired all the Boy Scouts to like use little pins and like hand ink all his dice. And it was apparently like all the Boy Scouts in his neighborhood. So like the 20 kids he knew. But now that they've grown up, he doesn't have a labor supply anymore. And so he has to hand ink his own dice. And he was like, if you want me to ink my own dice, that's going to cost a lot of money. I'm an old man. And I was like, it's cool, man. I'll take them uninked. But it was, anyway, it's working with Luzaki is always a treat. And there's always a story involved with everything you do with him. And one of them was how he basically employed all the local Boy Scouts as summer labor to ink his dice for many years. Anyway, last couple comments here. Thanks everybody for listening this far. I know it's been almost 2 hours now. If you don't already have it on your calendar, please attend our closing ceremonies, which will be tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific or 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on Twitch. We've had several amazing events going, actually hundreds of amazing events going on at Bride of Cyclops Con, but several tournaments in particular. We're going to talk about the results of the Return to the Starless Sea, which Mark and Terry will present. We had over 100 players run through this, our first fully fledged online tournament designed from scratch for this event, and it went great. And so we'll announce the results later on today. We also had Harley's Agartha funnel tournament, so to speak, which was running. So we'll announce the results of that. We have the winner of the Stump the Game Lizards, which we'll talk about at the closing ceremonies. We will also give out the Goodie Awards, which is for, it's like the dumbest name, but it just stuck. It's basically, for many years, we had a lot of great contributors and great judges who helped us out every year at Gen Con. And so I started getting medals made for them just to, say thank you for their comments or for their contributions. And anyway, I think this is the 3rd year in a row we've done it. So we'll have medals made up for these folks, but just honoring some judges and contributors and community members who have done a lot for the DCC community and Goodman Games community. And then at the end, we'll have a raffle. So if you are part of Bride of Cyclops Con, you have a badge number, and there's instructions on our website of how you can look that up on tabletop events. But we will be rolling dice to determine some random badge numbers, and those people will get autograph modules and so on. The last thing to mention here, Thorne, if you can pull up the cover art to the yearbook. Every year we do a yearbook, which traditionally for many years we called it the Gen Con Program Guide, because it came out every year at Gen Con, and then we kind of switched the name to yearbook. But basically, it's kind of a compilation of all the fun stuff we did in the year. So it has a lot of articles and interviews and sort of one-off game material aspects. It also usually has either the prior year's tournament module or whatever big event we ran at Gen Con. It has photos from all the cons we went to, not just photos of us, but photos that gamers contributed for all the great games of Goodman Games products they played. Anyway, this year it's called Goodman Games Yearbook number 8, the year that shall not be named, because nobody wants to put the name or the year 2020 in that title. But as a reminder, if you're here at Bride of Cyclops Con running events, please take screenshots. I mean, I would say take photos, but basically take screenshots of your games and send them to us. We would love to feature some of those digital events in the yearbook. It's just a way to commemorate the year. And someday when I'm old and looking back on what I did in my younger years, I'm going to read these yearbooks and remember each year and all the fun cons and all the fun games and all that kind of stuff. So you can order this now on GoodmanGames.com, but even if you're not going to order it, if you don't mind, take some screenshots and send in some photos. That'll be our way to commemorate Bride of Cyclops Con as part of this year's yearbook. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. I think that's all that I had. Really appreciate everybody coming to Bride of Cyclops Con, helping us have a lot of fun, just spreading the joy and appreciation of gaming, and sort of honoring those who came before us. So thanks a lot, everybody. And that's it. Signing off.